Who did you send anal beads to?
The used condoms.
You did not.
Yeah.
Who did you send used condoms to?
Oh, everybody. Maybe they didn't want to tell you, but no, I mean, I did a lot of things to create a dynamic.
Jared Leto is a man who has never once doubted himself, and that confidence is both the most fascinating and most exhausting thing about him.
I could finally soar, like a pigeon.
Most actors who lose the room do so in a way that doesn't stand out. You know, a few misfires, a slow decline in name value, followed by a pivot to streaming. Leto has managed to lose the room repeatedly, publicly, and with the energy of someone who believes he's winning.
Honka honka!
I think that's what it makes it so entertaining. There's a version of this that's admirable. Commitment is valuable, and a large amount of self-belief is necessary to get to that level of stardom. But there's a difference between an actor who backs their instincts and an actor who has mistaken the preparation for the performance itself, the mythology for the craft.
I'm too vulnerable for a world full of pain and lies.
Jared has spent the better part of 2 decades confusing the two, and the results speak for themselves in a way he seemingly cannot hear. The comparison that comes to mind oddly is Dwayne Johnson. Johnson also operates with total self-belief, builds a persona larger than any individual role, also prioritizes the brand alongside the work, while brandishing a massive ego since he always gets the biggest paycheck. But Johnson's instinct is to make the audience comfortable and deliver exactly what they came for with maximum efficiency. Leto's instinct runs the opposite direction, prioritizing his own experience of a role over the audience's experience of a character. The method becomes the product. The behind the scenes becomes the story you're actually interested as a car crash fascination. And somehow, every time he seems genuinely surprised that nobody is as impressed as he expected. The self-awareness gap is enormous. Let's get into the meat and pig-tatoes. See what I did there? Never mind. Let's get into it.
I want you to know that I love you and that I'm sorry. And I want you to be happy. So I got your brand new TV set. It's gonna be delivered in a couple of days. It's from Macy's.
Now, I do have to preface this critique by addressing that a baseline does exist, which can't be said for all the actors in this category. Leto can act, I don't deny that. There's a specific early window in his career where the intensity he brings to a role is proportionate to what the role requires, where the commitment serves the character rather than consuming it.
I always thought you were the most beautiful girl I ever seen.
But we gotta go back to the turn of the century to figure out what happened. Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream follows 4 people in Coney Island whose lives are systematically dismantled by addiction. Harry Goldfarb, his girlfriend Marion, and his friend Tyrone share a dependency that begins as a manageable escape and accelerates into total destruction. Harry's mother Sarah becomes addicted to diet pills after being called for a television game show, her mental state deteriorating in parallel with her son's physical one. The film is structured as a descent with no floor, and each act tightens the grip until the final sequence renders all 4 characters broken beyond recovery. It documents collapse with the detachment of a case study and the visual intensity of a fever dream. Harry is the film's emotional anchor, despite not being its most visually arresting presence. He's a young man who loves his mother, loves Marion, and is already too far in to see a way out. His arc moves from functional dependency to desperation to physical ruin. The image of Harry in a hospital bed crying, his arm amputated, is among the film's most devastating moments, and he plays that devastation so well. This is the performance that makes everything afterward harder to explain. Leto plays Harry with a specificity that has almost nothing to do with the performance extremity he would later become known for. It is a controlled, interior, emotionally precise piece of work. The fact that it exists makes the subsequent 20 years considerably more difficult to write off as simple inability. The instrument was there. Or was it?
That's here. That's here. That's right over there.
For those of you who consider themselves super fans of Jared Leto's work, you might say I have no idea what I'm talking about, since the roles he took on in the later half of that decade seem to dismantle my overarching claim. After all, it's got that extreme physical transformation I value so much when talking about what these actors lack. Well, let's take a closer look at a couple of them. Chapter 27 follows the days leading up to Mark David Chapman's murder of John Lennon outside the Dakota Building in New York City. The film is structured almost entirely around Chapman's internal world, his fixation on Catcher in the Rye, his contradictory admiration and resentment toward Lennon, and the slow crystallization of an act he has already decided to commit. It is a character study with nowhere to go, which is either a brave structural choice or a miscalculation depending entirely on whether the central performance can sustain it. It cannot. Dallas Buyers Club follows Ron Woodruff, a Texas electrician diagnosed with AIDS in 1985, who begins smuggling unapproved medications into the United States after finding them more effective than the clinical trials available to him. Matthew McConaughey plays Woodruff. Jared Leto plays Rayon, a transgender woman Woodruff meets in the hospital who becomes his business partner and, gradually, the film's emotional conscience. The film was received as a serious awards contender. Leto won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. The Academy has made worse decisions, though the margin is occasionally closer than it should be. These two roles represent the first crystallization of what becomes Leto's dominant mode, physical transformation as the load-bearing wall of the performance. In Chapter 27, he gained 67 pounds to play Chapman. In Dallas Buyers Club, he lost a significant amount of weight, shaved his eyebrows, and underwent a complete physical reconstruction to play Rayon, metaphorically, of course. Both decisions were the right instinct applied to the wrong problem. What's worth establishing clearly is that both of these films are based on a true story, which removes a significant portion of an actor's creative latitude. Chapman's psychology is documented extensively. Rayon is a composite, but she exists in a specific social and medical reality that carries its own obligations. The constraint matters because it means the performances can't be evaluated purely as interpretation. There's a factual framework they're operating inside, and the question is whether Leto is serving that framework or using it as cover. Chapter 27 answers that question early. Leto plays Chapman with a quality of deliberate opacity that initially reads as restraint and gradually reveals itself as absence. The weight, the shuffling physicality, the flat vocal delivery, honestly, these are accurate choices for a man whose inner life was characterized by dissociation. The problem is that accuracy and performance are not the same thing. Leto replicates the surface of Chapman's documented behavior without generating any sense of the interior pressure that made him legible as a human being rather than a case study. Sometimes you can really feel the heavy-handedness when showing his sociopathic tendencies. The film needs the audience inside Chapman's logic, however disturbed, because that's the only way the ending carries any weight. Leto keeps them outside it. The preparation is visible throughout in a way that preparation should never be. You can feel the research sitting on top of the character rather than underneath it. The performance can't sustain the interiority the film requires, so it substitutes duration. Chapman is on screen for almost the entire runtime, and Leto seems to believe that sustained presence is equivalent to sustained psychological depth. It isn't. Dallas Buyers Club is a more complicated case because Rayon is the more complicated construction. McConaughey's Woodruff is the film's engine, and Rayon functions as its moral register, the character whose humanity Woodruff has to reckon with in order for his arc to mean anything. It's a supporting role that requires emotional precision and the ability to make dignity legible under sustained dehumanization. Leto's physicality is exact. The movement and the specific quality of exhaustion Rayon carries. These are all considered and specific. Then the scene starts, and the performance retreats to the same territory as Chapter 27, surface accuracy without interior life. The Oscar exists because the transformation is visible and the character is sympathetic, and the film was a prestige contender in a year that rewarded that combination. What it doesn't account for is whether Rayon's emotional arc actually lands through the performance or through the writing and the audience's goodwill toward the character's situation. The scenes between Leto and McConaughey work largely because McConaughey is doing the relational heavy lifting, his discomfort and growing recognition of Rayon as a person. All of that is generated from his side of the scene. Leto receives it. He doesn't produce it. The pattern that emerges across both films is precise. Leto discovers that physical transformation generates critical attention and awards consideration in a way that interior performance work rarely does. At least, not for him. The body becomes the argument. The preparation becomes the credential. There was a video I saw recently that talked about the most acting being frequently rewarded more than best acting, and I think Jared is a good representation of the former. Chapter 27 was praised for his commitment. Dallas Buyers Club got him the Oscar. The lesson he appears to have taken from both is that the methodology is the performance. Everything that follows operates on that assumption, with results that become increasingly difficult to defend. Let's move on to his magnum opus.
You want this?
I do.
Say it.
Suicide Squad is built around the premise of Amanda Waller assembling a team of incarcerated metahumans and criminals as a covert response unit for threats conventional military forces can't or won't handle. The Jonkler is not part of that team. He exists outside the film's central plot as Harley Quinn's obsessive counterpart, appearing in fragmentary flashbacks and 2 or 3 present-tense sequences that collectively amount to roughly 11 minutes of screen time. This is worth establishing up front because Leto's preparation for the role, months of method immersion, sustained on-set character work, a series of gifts to castmates that included used condoms, a live rat, and a dead pig, was proportioned for a lead performance in a very different film than the one that was actually made. Margot Robbie received the rat. Will Smith declined participation entirely, which remains the most professionally sound decision made during this production. The Joker has been performed by enough serious actors across enough serious films that any new interpretation carries an implicit obligation. Justify your existence in that lineage. Offer a unique point of view. The character is elastic enough to support radically different readings. Anarchic, calculating, comedic, apocalyptic, but it requires a reading. And as we can see, he took that a little bit too far. The grill, the damaged tattoo, the shirtless aggression, the laugh that makes your ears bleed. These are signifiers assembled in the approximate shape of a character without any coherent psychology underneath them. In less academic terms, he's fucking awful. I kind of feel bad, because you can clearly see the preparation was extensive, but the point of view never materialized. What's most revealing is how the performance handles the few scenes that actually require something. The flashback sequences with Harley, which should establish the specific texture of their dynamic and give the audience a reason to invest in it, are just ruined by how over the top he is, and it's in a way that you can't quite explain to someone who isn't all that familiar with the Joker. Leto mistakes volume for menace and unpredictability for depth. The Joker should feel dangerous because of what he might do. This one feels loud because of what he's already decided to do, which is perform dangerousness at the audience until they're convinced. It's the Chapter 27 problem scaled up and placed inside a franchise film with a massive audience and a character who cannot afford that kind of vacancy. I mean, it's as if he watched The Dark Knight while hammered and writing notes that explain what makes everything stand out. The most damning element isn't the performance itself. It's the distance between the mythology surrounding it and what actually exists on screen. Leto gave interviews about the psychological toll of inhabiting the character. Cast members spoke about the on-set atmosphere his method created. The press cycle was constructed around the idea of a performance so committed it was almost irresponsible. What the film contains is 15 minutes of an edgy man in a purple coat laughing too much. It's like some sort of stolen valor attempt to mimic the stories you'd hear about Heath Ledger's preparations. The disproportion between the preparation narrative and the actual output is so vast it stops being frustrating and becomes almost instructive. A clean demonstration of what happens when the performance of commitment replaces commitment to the performance. His Joker is the perfect embodiment of what's wrong with this DC cinematic universe. Way too many people who don't understand the source material given the budget and freedom to lean into their most self-indulgent tendencies. And if you thought he was done standing out amongst the worst in an already dead cinematic universe, you'd be wrong.
I miss you too. But yes, she has been working with me to save our lives. I could ask her to stop if you like, put us out of our misery.
Morbius follows Dr. Michael Morbius, a biochemist with a rare blood disorder who synthesizes bat DNA in an attempt to cure himself and inadvertently becomes a living vampire. He can echolocate, move at superhuman speed, and sustain himself on artificial blood, temporarily. His childhood friend Milo has the same condition, undergoes the same transformation, and immediately begins killing people, which Morbius opposes on moral grounds despite having conducted the experiment on a boat in international waters specifically to avoid regulatory oversight. The film was delayed multiple times, received catastrophically, and produced a meme economy that substantially exceeded its cultural footprint as a film. Sony has announced a sequel. The theatrical experience of capitalism continues. Morbius is the necessary endpoint of this argument because it removes the method entirely. There is no documented immersion, no extreme physical transformation, no press cycle about psychological toll. What remains without any of that scaffolding is the baseline, and the baseline is very nearly nothing. Leto plays Morbius with a flat, affectless quality that might generously be described as restraint, and more accurately described as absence. The character is written as a genius driven by obsession and moral conflict, someone whose intelligence should be legible in how he occupies a room, and whose internal contradictions should generate friction in every scene. Leto produces neither. Morbius moves through the film at a consistent emotional temperature of mild concern, which is approximately the correct response to being slightly late for a meeting, and not to having accidentally given yourself the biology of a nocturnal predator. There's a dark joke there somewhere, but I fear I don't have the bravery to make it. The action sequences expose the problem most directly because physical performance requires a quality of presence that can't be substituted. Morbius in combat should communicate something about the character's relationship to his own power, the horror of it, the seduction of it, the specific moral cost of using it. Leto plays these sequences as choreography. There is no interiority attached to the violence, no sense that anything happening on screen is being experienced by the person at the center of it. The CGI does more expressive work than the performance does, which is a sentence that should not be possible to write about a lead actor in a major studio film, let alone a Sony superhero movie. What Morbius confirms, and what makes it the logical conclusion of this particular filmography, is that the transformation was never a tool in service of character work. It was the character work. Strip it away, and what's left is an actor with a surprisingly limited emotional vocabulary, operating in a role that needed fluency. The critical reception to Morbius was so uniform in its dismissal that it briefly became a cultural event, which is a strange kind of fame, being so comprehensively inadequate that the inadequacy itself becomes the story. Leto has spent his career generating stories about his performances. Morbius is the first one where the story is simply that there isn't one. Obviously, he's not the sole reason the movie bombed, but his contributions definitely didn't help.
Fiat 600.
Fiat. Fiat 600. You see it.
House of Gucci follows the rise and collapse of Patrizia Reggiani's marriage into the Gucci fashion dynasty, culminating in her orchestrating the murder of her ex-husband Maurizio Gucci in 1995. Ridley Scott directs it as a operatic crime drama with an ensemble that includes Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, Al Pacino, and Jeremy Irons. The film has considerable talent distributed across it unevenly, which is a polite way of saying that some people in it are acting and some people in it are doing something else. Jared Leto plays Paolo Gucci, Maurizio's cousin and the family's most visible liability, a man whose creative ambitions consistently exceed his actual ability and whose desperation for legitimacy makes him exploitable by everyone around him. Remind you of anyone? Paolo is written as tragic comic relief, someone whose buffoonery carries a genuine undercurrent of pathos. The character requires an actor who can hold both registers simultaneously without collapsing into one. Leto collapses immediately and enthusiastically into the other. Paolo Gucci was a real person. He was eccentric, professionally frustrated, and ultimately used by Patrizia as a means of destabilizing the family from within. These are documented facts that establish a framework the performance is obligated to at least acknowledge. Leto acknowledges none of them. He arrives on screen in a fat suit, a bald cap, and an accent that exists in a geographical location no map has ever confirmed, and proceeds to treat every scene as an opportunity to remind the audience that he is acting. The physicality is total and immediate. Paolo waddles, gesticulates, mugs, and emotes at a frequency the film around him is not broadcasting on. Maybe he thought he was playing Matt Reeves's Penguin. Where everyone else in the ensemble is playing a version of reality, however heightened, Leto is playing a version of a version, a caricature of the caricature the script already provides. The performance would be easier to dismiss if it weren't so clearly intentional. These are not the choices of an actor who misread the assignment. They are the choices of an actor who read the assignment, decided it wasn't enough, and substituted his own improv, and they had no choice but to include it in the final cut. The accent alone represents a commitment of some kind. It is consistent and completely inexplicable. Paolo Gucci was Italian. The accent Leto produces suggests someone who learned Italian from a single conversation with a man who had once visited Rome briefly and was also doing a bit. Ridley Scott, a director with the authority and experience to redirect this at any point during production, allowed it to continue for the entire shoot. This says something about Scott's late-period instincts that probably deserves its own video. What House of Gucci ultimately exposes is the full trajectory completed. Chapter 27 and Dallas Buyers Club established that physical transformation generates critical currency regardless of what the performance beneath it contains. Suicide Squad demonstrated that the method mythology could sustain a press narrative when the output was indefensible. Morbius removed the transformation and revealed the vacancy underneath. House of Gucci puts the transformation back, strips away any remaining pretense of psychological interiority, and presents the result as a performance. It is maximally Leto, loud, physically committed, technically elaborate, and empty at the center. Paolo deserved better. So did the fat suit. Jared Leto has a net worth of $90 million, an Academy Award, and a press profile that has consistently described him as one of the most dedicated performers working in film. The performances are still what they are. That gap between the reputation and the reality, between the mythology and the screen, is the most interesting thing about his career. And it exists because the industry rewarded the narrative of commitment long enough that the commitment became the product. The preparation became the credential. The method became the alibi. The comparison that closes this most accurately is Kristen Stewart. Similar net worth, similar critical trajectory, and similar limitations as a performer. A narrow emotional bandwidth that the right material can accommodate and the wrong material exposes immediately. The difference is that Stewart doesn't perform commitment. She doesn't send anyone a dead pig. She shows up, works within her range, and occasionally finds a role that fits her instrument precisely, at which point she's genuinely good. Damn, I'm at the point where I'm complimenting Kristen. Look what you made me do, Jared. Leto has more raw talent than Stewart and has done considerably less with it, because the talent got buried under the apparatus he built around it. None of his theatrics produced a body of work that justifies the machinery. It produced Chapter 27 and Morbius and a Joker with a face tattoo that his studio subsequently airbrushed out of promotional materials, which is the most succinct critical assessment anyone has offered. What's left when you strip the narrative away is an actor who had a genuine instrument, demonstrated it once under the right conditions, and spent the following 2 decades performing the idea of a serious actor rather than being one. Requiem for a Dream is still there. It still works. It just makes everything after it harder to watch because it proves the ceiling existed and shows you exactly when he stopped reaching for it. That's all for this one. See you next week.